Hey folks, Dale Davidson here, Dear VA Guy. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm going to jump right in. Got a letter from Sharon. She was born in 1985 and she was born with a birth defect, unfortunately. And that when she was younger, she was born in a kind of a rural hospital. Her father was a Vietnam veteran and was born in a rural hospital, so they didn't really diagnose her for the birth defect until probably a year or two after her birth. And of course, because it was a rural hospital, they didn't have all of the fancy equipment that a lot of these bigger hospitals had. So medically, they didn't get this. They didn't get her condition properly diagnosed for a while. And so she has applied for benefits as a dependent for spina bifida from the VA and has been turned down and wants to know why. And want to know if we could help her. Well, certainly we're going to do what we can to get these benefits rolling your way. So what I like to do is I like to kind of go, let's go to the basics here, okay? Let's go to the very beginning, where the VA provides benefits and a monthly allowance to individuals who suffer from birth defects, spina bifida specifically, and whose biological father or mother were in Vietnam. They were a Vietnam veteran, okay? So the term Vietnam veteran means a person who performed active military service in Vietnam from about January 1962 to about May of 1975. Doesn't matter what you did. You could have been a cook on one of the big bases there, but you were there, so you were are a Vietnam veteran. Now, we all know about the Agent Orange and the spraying of Agent Orange in that country and the health effects on our veterans coming back with different kinds of cancers and things of that nature, detrimental things like that. But what has happened is that these veterans who were over there, they ingested Agent Orange, water, or it was sprayed on them or whatever, it was in there, they breathed it in, and somehow, some way, this agent, these toxic chemicals have passed through their body and done something funky with their DNA, and now it's passed to Sharon, and she's got spina bifida and needs help. So realize that spina bifida is the only birth defect where the VA will award monetary benefits based on Agent Orange, okay? You've got to have a diagnosis of spina bifida, and either your father or mother have had to been a Vietnam veteran. Now, back up a little bit. Let's make sure that you were conceived, or your child was conceived, after you came home from Vietnam. If your child was conceived prior to you going to Vietnam, then this does not, you don't qualify. In this case, Sharon's father was a Vietnam veteran, and that she has spina bifida. The problem is that her medical records early on didn't have a formal diagnosis of spina bifida. And I know there's different types of spina bifida. And look, I'm not a doctor, okay? And so don't beat me up if I mispronounce things. But there's Chiari malformation. There's a 1 and a 2. The 2 is the more severe, and Sharon's got the CM2, which is the spina bifida Chiari malformation type 2. So I mentioned, the medical evidence and the lack thereof. And so I'm really questioning, under the VA Claims Assistance Act of 2000, whether or not the VA has adequately assisted you in developing your claim. Now, according to this law, Congress requires that the VA assist you, a claimant, by helping you obtain information service records, medical records, those kinds of things in order to develop your claim. Okay, this law puts a duty on the VA to assist you in gathering this evidence and information that is needed to prove that you actually have spina bifida CM2. So that includes reasonable efforts to have medical examinations. So my question is, did they ever offer you a medical examination? Now, it's my understanding with respect to spina bifida and CM2 in particular that you're born with it, okay? So it may not be in your medical records because of the nature of the hospital, the rural hospital that you were born in. But so we've got to figure out how we can get that information before the VA, as far as saying, look, she was born with it, because you don't develop spina bifida after you were born. My understanding, again, I'm not a doctor, okay, so you're born with this malformation. So we've got to get that information in front of the VA so that they can look at that. So, and one of those ways is their duty to provide a medical examination and get a medical opinion. So if we had, for instance, a doctor that the VA sent you to that said, hey, look, we're going to look at you and diagnose you, and yes, you have spina bifida CM2, or no, you don't. Either you do or you don't, okay? So it's very important to you to be able to prove your service connected, you did with your father, but we've got to have the medical evidence that is specific to your condition. It says, yes, you have this condition, you don't develop afterwards, you're born with it, so therefore you qualify. So there's a little test that we go by. It's called the McLendon elements, and it's explained in the statute that says in order for the VA to assist you in obtaining a medical examination, okay? So there's got to be competent evidence of your diagnosis or your condition, and you've got all of the symptoms for this disability, so therefore a medical examination is warranted. Number two, any kind of evidence that establishes your diagnosis was during a presumptive period. So yes, your father served in Vietnam during that January 1962 to May of 1975, and it didn't matter what he served on. I think he was on the brown water there. He served, so you have that presumptive exposure, and I think we can get the VA to acknowledge that. There's got to be some kind of indication that your disability is associated with your dad's service. But remember, spina bifida is the only condition that the VA will recognize as being associated with, only birth defect for dependents of veterans that they will recognize as being associated or connected in any way, shape, form, or fashion to the Agent Orange. You may have a child that's born with a cleft chin, heart issues, those kinds of things. And yes, in my opinion, they are clearly associated with Agent Orange exposure, and there's evidence to that, but the VA has not recognized that as of yet. And so our last element is there's insufficient evidence in your file for them to make a decision. So what they've done is they just said, look, there's insufficient, it appears from your letter, it's insufficient information in your file to make a decision because, number one, your birth records don't indicate that diagnosis. We'll have to look at those, but we've got to have some kind of medical evidence in front of the VA examiners that says, yes, you were born with spina bifida. You've got spina bifida. You can't get it any other way, and so therefore you would qualify. So again, those four elements we call them the McLendon elements. You've got to meet all four of those elements under the Veterans Claims Assistance Act of 2000 in order for them to assist you. I think that you've met all four. Certainly you need to contact our office and we can get that ball rolling for you. Remember though, you always have to have a nexus, and that's the connection. Your father was a Vietnam veteran. He was in the brown water during the period of time. So we've got our connection. So we have our presumptions here of exposure to Agent Orange. Okay. And then we got to make sure that the linchpin here is we've got to make sure that we've got a diagnosis of spina bifida in your file. It's got to be in your medical records. So we'll be contacting you, Sharon, here in just a little bit. So let's talk some more about that and get some medical records together so we could submit those to the VA to get the help that you needed. So if you want to explore the issues with respect to spina bifida, I did this video a couple of months ago. Go out and check that out. That goes into a little bit more depth of the benefits available to spina bifida patients. And until next time, be blessed.